The fluorescent lights hummed their mechanical lullaby across the empty 15th floor. I could see my reflection in the conference table's polished surface as I scrubbed at the coffee ring someone had left that morning. The smell of industrial cleaner stinging my nostrils, mixing with the faint perfume still lingering from whatever meeting had happened here hours ago. My shoulders ached from pushing the vacuum cart, knees protesting every time I knelt to pick up trash. But I kept moving, methodical, thorough. Mr. Ramirez from building management paid weekly, and I'd learned not to give anyone a reason to replace me. Not when Sophie's school supplies were due next month. Not when the electric bill sat unpaid on my kitchen counter for the 3rd week running. Sophie's voice drifted from the corner office where I'd set her up with coloring books and crackers. She was supposed to be working on her homework while I finished my shift. But when I looked up, I could see her small frame silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights 40 stories below making her look even tinier. "What is it, sweetheart?" called, dropping the cloth back into the bucket. The water had turned cloudy brown. "There's a man at the elevator. He's just standing there." My chest constricted. An old fear I'd spent 12 months trying to bury. I forced air into my lungs, slow and controlled. Meant nothing. This was a high-security building, badge access only. Night security did rounds. That's all it was. "Come here, baby. We're almost done." I peeled off my rubber gloves, fingers pruned and aching, and started packing our things. Sophie's backpack with a cartoon character she'd already outgrown, my purse with a broken zipper held together with a safety pin, our apartment key on a lanyard because I couldn't afford to lose it again. Everything important reduced to what fit in one bag. I'd gotten good at carrying light. This building sat in the financial district, where power lunches cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Glass and steel towers reaching for clouds. The kind of places I used to visit wearing designer heels instead of cleaning them in discount sneakers. Sometimes when I locked up late like this, I'd catch myself remembering what it felt like to belong in spaces like these. To sign for lunch without checking the prices. To not count every dollar twice. But nostalgia didn't pay rent. I crossed to Sophie and took her hand. Her fingers were sticky with fruit snack residue, warm and small. She clutched the math worksheet she'd been working on, the numbers getting progressively sloppier down the page as her attention had wandered. "Is he still there?" she whispered. I glanced toward the reception area. The elevator banks were around the corner, out of sight from where we stood. The floor was silent except for the building's ambient hum, HVAC systems. Distant traffic muffled by triple-pane glass. "There's no one, baby. You're just tired." But my phone was already in my hand as we walked toward the exit, finger hovering over 911. Old instincts I thought I'd trained myself out of roaring back to life. The hallway stretched ahead of us, too long, the emergency exit sign at the far end suddenly feeling very far away. Sophie pressed against my side. Her breathing had quickened. "Mommy, I don't think we should." My phone buzzed. Private number. I almost didn't answer. Debt collectors had been calling all week, but my thumb was already swiping before I could think better of it. "Ms. Boucher." I didn't recognize the voice. Female professional but with something underneath the careful tone. Something wrong. "This is Principal Martinez from Riverside Elementary. I need you to come to the school right away." The floor tilted. "It's almost 10 at night. Sophie's with me." "What's?" "Not Sophie." Pause that lasted too long. "I'm calling about tomorrow. We've had a security concern, and the district wants to verify pickup authorization for all students before." "What security concern?" Another pause. Too careful, too measured. "Someone attempted to access our student records this afternoon. They were asking specifically about your daughter." The phone slipped in my grip. The conference room suddenly felt airless, the city lights below blurring into streaks. Who? We don't know. But Ms. Boucher, we think you should know they had your married name. They were asking for Sophie Wilson. The name I'd buried. The name I'd spent a year trying to erase from every document, every database, every piece of paper trail that connected me to him. Sophie tugged my sleeve. Mommy, the man turned. He stood by the elevator bank now, visible in the reflection of the darkened office windows behind us. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than my car. He wasn't looking at us, wasn't making any threatening moves. Just standing there, waiting. My hand found Sophie's head, pressing her face against my hip, blocking her view as my heart hammered against my ribs. Ms. Boucher, are you still there? The man's phone lit up. He lifted it to his ear, and even from 40 feet away, even through glass and distance, I saw the gesture I'd memorized from 1,000 arguments, 1,000 late nights waiting up. That particular tilt of his head. I need to go, I whispered into my phone. Ms. Boucher, we really think you should file a police. Hung up. The man by the elevator turned. Even before I saw his face, I knew. Would have known his silhouette in absolute darkness. Would have recognized him from the way he carried himself, the predatory stillness that had once made me feel protected and now made my stomach drop. Jason. He didn't move toward us. Didn't call out. Just stood there, meeting my eyes across the empty office floor. His expression unreadable. And I knew, with the sick certainty of someone who'd spent years learning to read his every micro-expression, that he wasn't here by chance. Something had happened. Something bad enough to bring him here after 12 months of silence. Bad enough to violate the custody agreement, to risk the restraining order I'd never quite filed, to track me to a job I'd never told him about. Sophie's fingers dug into my side. Who is that man? I opened my mouth but no sound came out. Because what do you tell your 7-year-old when her father, the man you spent a year protecting her from, suddenly appears like a ghost from another life? What do you say when the devil you ran from is standing between you and the only exit? Jason's phone was still at his ear. Mine buzzed again, vibrating in my grip. Private number. This time I knew who it was. I swiped to answer, bringing it to my ear with a shaking hand, my eyes never leaving his face across the distance. Katrina. His voice, even through the phone line, even after all this time, sent electricity down my spine. Don't run. We need to talk. Stay away from us. I can't do that. Not anymore. In the background of his call, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A second voice, urgent and close. Boss, they're moving up the timeline. We've got maybe 6 hours. Jason's jaw tightened. Katrina, listen to me very carefully. Tomorrow morning, do not take Sophie to school. Do not follow your normal routine. Someone is watching you, and they're not one of mine. You son of a... This isn't about us. His voice dropped, gaining an edge that used to terrify me. Now it just confirmed every fear that had driven me away. This is about the Kozlov family. They know where Sophie goes to school. They know your schedule. They know you're vulnerable. The word hung between us like poison. Vulnerable. Because I'd left him. Because I'd chosen poverty and safety over his blood-soaked fortune. Because I'd been stupid enough to think I could just walk away. This is your fault, I breathed. Yes. No denial, no justification. Just cold acknowledgement. And now I'm going to fix it. But I need you to trust me for the next 12 hours. I will never trust you again. Across the office floor, he lowered his phone. Our eyes locked, and in that moment, I saw everything I'd been trying to forget. The man I'd loved, the monster I'd fled, the father Sophie asked about in careful whispers when she thought I couldn't hear. "You don't have to trust me, Katrina." His voice came through the speaker, quiet and absolute. "You just have to survive the night." He ended the call. The elevator dinged behind him, and 3 more men in dark suits stepped onto the floor. Security detail. Exactly like the ones who used to follow us everywhere in our old life. Sophie's hand tightened in mine. "Mommy, I'm scared." I pulled her close, pressed my lips to her hair, and felt the last remnants of the life I'd built crumbling around me. Because I had 2 choices: trust the man who'd made my life a nightmare, or gamble with my daughter's life that he was lying about the threat. And the worst part, the part that made my throat close and my eyes burn, was that I'd seen his face when he said, "vulnerable." I'd seen the fear. Jason didn't scare easily. Whatever was coming, whatever had brought him out of the shadows after a year of respecting my distance, it was worse than anything I'd imagined. I kissed Sophie's forehead and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. The call connected on the first ring. "What do I need to do?" His exhale of relief was nearly inaudible. "Pack a bag. 1 for you, 1 for Sophie. Only essentials. My men will escort you somewhere safe until I can neutralize the threat." "How long?" "However long it takes." "And then what?" "You'll just disappear again. Let us go back to Katrina." His voice gentled just slightly, carrying a weight of something I didn't want to name. "Let's get Sophie safe first. Then we'll talk about everything else." Through the glass, I watched him turn toward the elevator. His security detail fell in around him, practiced and precise. The doors opened. He paused, looking back one last time across the empty office, across the distance I'd spent 12 months creating. Even from here, I could read his expression. "Sorry." And it's too late for sorry to matter. The elevator doors closed. Sophie whispered against my side. "Was that Daddy?" I looked down at my daughter, innocent, trusting, with her father's eyes and my stubborn chin, and felt the foundation of every choice I'd made begin to crack. "Yes, baby." "Is he taking us home?" A word that used to mean marble foyers and security gates, designer furniture and armed guards at the door. A word that had become a cramped apartment and second-hand everything, freedom and fear in equal measure. "I don't know," I whispered. But as I gathered our things and headed toward the men waiting by the service elevator, not Jason's men, I told myself, "just hired security, this is temporary, this doesn't mean anything." I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil. Again. And this time, I didn't have the luxury of being wrong about him. This time my daughter's life hung in the balance. This time I had no choice but to let Jason Wilson back into our world. And pray that saving Sophie didn't cost us everything I'd sacrificed to set us free. The safe house smelled like cigarettes and desperation. I sat on a threadbare couch that had seen better decades, watching the clock on the wall tick toward 3 a.m. while Sophie slept in the bedroom down the hall. Jason's men had positioned themselves at every entrance. Silent, armed, professional. The kind of security I'd once taken for granted. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every sound made my pulse spike. Footsteps in the hallway, a car door slamming outside, the building settling in the small hours. My phone sat clutched in my hand, Principal Martinez's words playing on repeat in my head. Someone attempted to access our student records. They had your married name. The door opened without warning. I jerked upright, heart in my throat, but it was him. Jason filled the doorway, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking like he'd aged a year in the hour since I'd seen him. 3 men flanked him. More security, their eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Our gazes locked. A year of silence, of carefully constructed distance, of pretending we were strangers who'd once shared a bed. His jaw was tighter than I remembered, new lines around his eyes, but the way he looked at me, like I was something precious and breakable, that hadn't changed, made me furious. "Where's Sophie?" His voice was rough, scraped raw. "Sleeping. Don't wake her." He nodded, dismissing his men with a gesture. They retreated to the hallway, and suddenly we were alone. The air felt too thin. Jason crossed to the window, checked the street below, then turned back to me. "The police can't help with this. The police are who normal people call when. You stopped being normal people when you married me, Katrina. Not cruel, just factual. The Kozlovs don't leave witnesses for the police to find." My stomach turned. "Then what?" "I'm handling it." He pulled out his phone, pulled up security footage. "I've already talked to the school staff. The principal didn't want to cooperate until I made it clear what cooperation looked like. The old Jason. The one who got what he wanted through money or intimidation, whichever worked faster." He held out the phone. I didn't want to take it, didn't want to see, but my hand moved anyway. The footage showed Riverside Elementary's parking lot. Timestamp from yesterday afternoon. A black van, windows tinted, idling near the pickup line. "They've been watching her for at least 3 days," Jason said quietly. "They know her schedule, her teacher, which door she uses. This wasn't random, Katrina. Someone gave them inside information." The room tilted. "Who?" "I'm finding out." His eyes met mine, and I saw something that terrified me more than anger. Cold, absolute purpose. "But first I need to move you both. This location is temporary. I have somewhere more secure." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "You don't get to just. I will burn this city down to find who's behind this." His voice dropped, deadly quiet. "I will tear apart every organization, every connection, every person who even looked at my daughter wrong. But I need you safe first." My daughter. Like Sophie was still his, like I hadn't spent a year building a life away from his world. His violence, his blood money. "I left you," I said. "I left specifically so Sophie wouldn't grow up in this. And now she's a target because of it." No accusation in his tone, but the words landed like blows anyway. "They see her as leverage. As a way to get to me through you. The only thing keeping her alive right now is that they don't know I'm involved yet. So this is my fault. For leaving." "No." He moved closer, and I hated that I didn't step back. "This is mine. For letting you go without better protection. For thinking distance would keep you safe. For underestimating how badly the Kozlovs want revenge." The honesty was worse than lies would have been. I could fight his arrogance, his control. I didn't know what to do with his regret. "What happens now?" Jason's expression hardened into something I'd seen before, right before he destroyed someone who'd crossed him. "Now, I remind everyone why they used to be afraid of the Wilson name. And you remember that whatever else I am, whatever you think of me." He paused, jaw working. "I'm the only one who can bring her home." The unspoken truth settled between us like poison. I was back in his world whether I wanted it or not. And this time, the cost of leaving might be Sophie's life. The penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city I no longer recognized. All glass and steel and money. I'd forgotten how high up Jason lived, literally and figuratively. Sophie clung to my hand as we stepped off the private elevator. Her eyes wide at the marble foyer, the crystal chandeliers, the art that cost more than most people's houses. This used to be home. Now it felt like walking into a mausoleum. "The guest wing is secure," Jason said, not looking at me. Sophie's old room is exactly how she left it. Course it was. Like he'd been waiting for us to come back. Men moved through the space with military precision, checking windows, installing additional cameras, speaking into earpieces in clipped tones. They called him boss, their deference absolute. I recognized a few faces from before. Marcus, who'd driven us to parent-teacher conferences while armed. Chen, who'd taught Sophie to play chess between security shifts. They nodded at me. I didn't nod back. Jason led us through the living room to a door I'd never seen open. The war room, apparently. Inside, surveillance screens covered an entire wall. Dozens of feeds from cameras across the city. A table held detailed maps. Photographs pinned with red string connecting faces and locations. Weapons lined one wall, organized with surgical precision. This was his real office, where the decisions that destroyed lives got made. We traced the van, Jason said, pulling up footage on the main screen. A warehouse district, industrial and abandoned. It belongs to a trafficking operation. Eastern European, connected to the Kozlov organization. My blood went cold. Trafficking. They move product, drugs, weapons, people. His voice was clinical, detached. Sophie's worth more as leverage than as product, but that doesn't mean they'll treat her gently. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tasting bile. Sophie had wandered to Chen, who was quietly showing her a tablet, keeping her distracted. Away from this. Away from what her father had become, or maybe what he'd always been. A door opened. Two of Jason's men dragged someone in, young, maybe 25, bleeding from his mouth, zip-tied and terrified. They threw him into a chair bolted to the floor. I'd never seen that chair before. Wondered how long it had been there. "This is Dmitri," Jason said conversationally, approaching the trafficker. "He was driving the van 3 days ago. He's going to tell us where they're keeping my daughter." Dmitri spat blood. "I don't know nothing about." Jason moved faster than I could track. One moment standing, the next his hand was around Dmitri's throat, slamming his head back against the chair. The sound made me flinch. "Let me be clear." Jason's voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "You will tell me everything. The only question is how much you'll bleed first." I should have looked away. Should have taken Sophie and left the room. But I stood frozen, watching my ex-husband transform into something monstrous, something efficient, something that got results through pain. 20 minutes later, Dmitri was sobbing, and I knew exactly which abandoned building to search. Jason wiped blood from his knuckles with a monogrammed handkerchief, barely winded. He nodded to Marcus. "Send a team. I want that location swept in the next hour." Then he looked at me, and I saw no apology in his eyes. No shame. Just cold pragmatism. "This is how my world works, Katrina. Information, leverage, violence. In that order." I wanted to hate him. Wanted to scream that this wasn't who I married, wasn't what I'd signed up for. But I remembered our wedding day. The church full of dangerous men in expensive suits, the gifts that came with unspoken debts, the way his hand had trembled slightly when he'd lifted my veil. I can handle this, I'd thought. Love is enough. God, I'd been naive. Marcus returned 30 minutes later, holding something that made my knees buckle. Sophie's backpack. Pink, with a unicorn patch she'd begged for last Christmas. "Found it in the building," Marcus said quietly. "No sign of her yet. But boss, there's blood." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Blood. My daughter's blood. Jason caught me before I hit the floor. His arms solid and familiar and wrong. "We'll find her," he whispered against my hair. "I promise you, Katrina. I will find her. And I realized with sick certainty. I'd let the devil back in. Now I had to watch him burn the world down. 36 hours. That's how long my daughter had been missing when Jason's phone chimed with an encrypted message. I knew from his face, the way color drained from his features, the way his jaw locked, that it was bad. He didn't show me immediately. Just stood there in the war room, staring at his screen like it held a death sentence. What is it? He turned the phone toward me. The video was 23 seconds long. Sophie sat in a concrete room, harsh fluorescent lighting washing out her skin. Her hair was tangled, tear tracks staining her cheeks, but she appeared unharmed. No visible injuries. No blood. "Mommy!" Her voice cracked. "Daddy, I want to come home. Please, I'll be good, I promise I'll be." The camera moved. A hand, large, calloused, gripped her shoulder. She flinched. Then a voice, accented and thick with malice. "You took everything from me, Jason Wilson. My business. My legacy. My son. Oz. Now I take everything from you." The video ended. I watched it 3 more times before Jason gently took the phone from my shaking hands. "There's no ransom demand," I whispered. "Why isn't there a ransom demand?" "Because this isn't about money." His voice was hollow. "This is about revenge." "Who is he?" Jason's jaw worked. "Viktor Kozlov. Russian mob. 5 years ago he was moving product through my territory. Drugs, weapons, women. I shut him down." "Shut him down how?" The silence stretched too long. "Jason. How?" "I killed his operation. Burned his warehouses. Eliminated his distribution network. Destroyed everything he'd built over 2 decades. He met my eyes. And when his son came after me in retaliation, I killed him too. Put a bullet between his eyes in front of his father." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. "You executed someone's child." "I protected my territory. My family. You and Sophie. Don't you dare," my voice broke. "Don't you dare make this about protecting us. Your past did this. Your violence, your brutal, vicious, psychotic need to be the biggest monster in the room. That's what brought this to our door." "Yes." No defensiveness, no justification. Just cold acknowledgement. My choices put Sophie in that room. My violence created an enemy who wants me to suffer. He stepped closer, and I saw something terrifying in his eyes. Not regret, but absolute certainty. "And my violence is the only thing that will save her." I wanted to hit him. Wanted to scream that he was exactly the monster I'd run from. Exactly the reason I'd chosen poverty over this blood-soaked empire. But Sophie's terrified face filled my mind. Her small voice begging to come home. Marcus entered with a laptop. "Boss, we've got something." Video metadata shows it was sent from a device in the industrial district. "We're triangulating now." Jason moved to the screens, all business. "Pull up thermal imaging for every building in a 5-mile radius. Cross-reference with properties Kozlov has connections to. Front companies, shell corporations, known associates." I watched him work, this man I'd once loved, and saw the thing I'd always feared. He was good at this. Efficient, ruthless, effective. The skills that destroyed lives were the same ones that might save our daughter. Hours bled into each other. His team worked in shifts, but Jason never stopped. Coordinating search teams, analyzing intelligence, making calls that sent men with guns into the night. At 3 a.m., I found him alone in his office, staring at a map covered in red circles. Possible locations, each one a place our daughter might be suffering. "You should sleep," he said without looking up. "So should you." "Can't." Every minute she's there. His voice caught. The first crack in his armor since this started. I should have left. Should have maintained the distance I'd spent a year building. But exhaustion and fear had stripped away my defenses, leaving only the raw truth. We were Sophie's parents. And right now that mattered more than everything else between us. I sat in the chair across from him. Tell me we're going to find her. Jason's eyes met mine, and for just a moment, I saw past the crime boss to the man who'd held Sophie minutes after she was born, tears streaming down his face. We're going to find her, he said. And when we do, Kozlov will wish I'd shown his son mercy. I believed him. God help me, I believed him. The strip club smelled like cheap perfume and cheaper secrets. Jason moved through it like he owned the place because he probably did. The bouncer nodded. The manager appeared within seconds, eager and afraid in equal measure. Mr. Wilson. Anything you need. I stood behind Jason, invisible in jeans and a borrowed jacket, watching how his world worked. Everyone owed him something. Everyone feared him. The bartender who'd seen Kozlov's men 2 nights ago. The dancer who'd overheard a conversation about the shipment. The DJ who'd noticed the black van idling outside. Information flowed to him like water to the ocean. We hit 3 more locations before dawn. An underground casino where men gambled with money that smelled like blood. A chop shop where stolen cars disappeared and reappeared with new identities. A warehouse where Jason's mere presence made hardened criminals talk without him saying a word. His reach was staggering. Terrifying. Everything I'd run from, laid bare in a single night. You built an empire, I said as we left the 4th location. Sunrise staining the sky pink. I built security. He opened the car door for me, old habit. For you. For Sophie. I never wanted this. I know. He slid into the driver's seat, exhaustion finally showing around his eyes. But you benefited from it. The house, the security, the life where nothing could touch you, that came from this. The accusation stung because it was true. I'd lived in willful ignorance, enjoying the luxury while pretending not to know where it came from. Until I'd found the gun. Sophie was 5, I said quietly. I was putting away her toys. There was a loaded Glock in her toy box, Jason. Hidden under her stuffed animals. His hands tightened on the wheel. You brought that world into her bedroom. Into the one place that should have been safe. My voice cracked. I asked you to choose. Family or business. You told me they were the same thing. They are. And that's why I left. The silence between us was thick with everything we'd never resolved. Every fight, every compromise I'd made. Every line he'd crossed while I looked away. But now we were here, working together because Sophie's life demanded it. And somewhere in the long hours something had shifted. The way he handed me coffee without asking how I took it. The way I anticipated his next move before he made it. Old rhythms, dangerous and familiar. Marcus's call came at 6 a.m. We've got one of Kozlov's men. Bringing him to the warehouse. The warehouse was Jason's, legitimately owned, illegitimately used. The man they dragged in was younger than Dmitri, more loyal, more afraid. He knew what happened to people who talked. Jason knew how to make people talk anyway. I should have left. Should have waited in the car, preserved whatever innocence I had left. But I stayed, watching as Jason methodically broke the man down. Not with rage, but with cold, surgical precision. A dislocated finger. Then another. Questions asked in conversational tones between screams. Where is Kozlov keeping the girl? I don't. Another finger. The crack echoed off concrete walls. The docks, the man sobbed. Warehouse 34. They're moving her tonight. Felt sick. Felt exhilarated. Felt like I was watching my daughter's salvation purchased with someone else's agony. Jason stepped back, wiping blood from his hands. Get him medical attention. Then make him disappear. He turned to me, and I saw it in his eyes, the question. The need to know if I still saw him as human after watching what he was capable of. Across the space between us. Didn't think, didn't analyze, just moved. Our lips crashed together, violent and desperate. His hands found my waist, mine tangled in his hair, and for a moment everything collapsed. Fear, anger, adrenaline, unresolved feelings exploding in a kiss that tasted like blood and regret. He pulled back first, breathing hard. Katrina! Don't! I pressed my forehead to his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath expensive fabric. Don't make this mean anything. We're not, this isn't. I know. But his arms stayed around me, and I didn't pull away, and we both knew we were lying. Warehouse 34, I whispered. We get Sophie. Then this ends. Then this ends, he agreed. Neither of us believed it. Because some things, violence, love, the way our bodies remembered each other despite everything, didn't end just because we wanted them to. They burned until there was nothing left. The war room had transformed into a command center. Jason's team surrounded the table, studying blueprints of Warehouse 34 like generals planning an invasion. Red markers indicated entry points, guard positions, sight lines. Marcus pointed to thermal imaging showing heat signatures. 5 guards, 1 smaller figure in the center room. Sophie. They're moving her in 48 hours, Jason said, voice clipped and professional. New location, probably overseas. We hit them tonight at 2 a.m. when shifts change. 6-man team, suppressed weapons, in and out in under 4 minutes. 7-man team, I said. Every head turned toward me. Katrina, no. Jason's tone left no room for argument. She's my daughter. I'm going. You're a liability. You have no training, no. She'll be terrified. My voice was steady despite my racing heart. Traumatized. She'll see armed men storming in and she won't know they're there to save her. She needs to see my face. She needs to know it's safe. Jason's jaw worked. We stared at each other across the table, wills colliding. Marcus cleared his throat. Boss, she's right. The kid will be in shock. Having her mother there could prevent complications. Jason's eyes never left mine. Fine. But you follow orders. You stay behind me. And you carry this. He pulled a Glock from his waistband, set it on the table between us. The gun looked obscene under the fluorescent lights. Black, efficient, deadly. An hour later, I stood in the penthouse's private range, Jason behind me, his hands adjusting my grip. His breath was warm against my ear. His body solid against my back. Too familiar. Too right. Feet shoulder width apart. Both hands on the grip. When you pull the trigger, you don't hesitate. His voice dropped. You pull this trigger if you have no choice. If someone's between you and Sophie. You understand. I nodded, throat tight. Say it. If I have no choice. Good. But he didn't step away. Just stood there. And I felt the weight of everything unspoken pressing down on us. Jason. My greatest fear isn't dying, he said quietly. It's failing you. Again. I turned in his arms, found his eyes. Saw past the crime boss to the man who'd held Sophie in the NICU for 3 days straight. Who'd slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair because he refused to leave her side. You didn't fail us. I did. His thumb brushed my cheek, gentle despite the calluses, despite the blood he'd spilled today. I chose wrong. Over and over. Put business before family, violence before peace. Failed you, Katrina. I won't fail, Sophie. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Terrifying. The promise of a man who would burn the world to keep it. Okay, I whispered. At 1:30 a.m., we loaded into 3 black SUVs. Body armor felt heavy and foreign against my chest. Communications equipment buzzed in my ear. Marcus coordinating positions, Chen reporting on guard movements, voices clipped and professional. Jason sat beside me in the lead vehicle, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. He'd traded his suit for tactical gear, looking like the soldier he'd once been before crime became more profitable than service. The warehouse district loomed ahead. Industrial wasteland, shipping containers stacked like metal mountains, sodium lights casting everything in sickly orange. No one spoke. The silence was heavy with 48 hours of fear, exhaustion, desperate hope. With everything we'd said and hadn't said. With violence waiting ahead and the terrible knowledge that we might fail. I touched the gun at my hip. Felt its weight, its promise. I have no choice. The vehicles stopped 3 blocks out. Jason's team moved like shadows, spreading to positions with military precision. He turned to me, his eyes holding mine in the darkness. Stay close. Stay quiet. And Katrina. He gripped my hand, squeezed once. We're bringing her home. I squeezed back. Together. Then we were moving through darkness toward the warehouse, toward our daughter, toward whatever waited in that concrete tomb. My terror was ice-cold and diamond-hard. My determination was absolute. Sophie was in there. And nothing, not Kozlov, not his men, not hell itself, was keeping me from her. Marcus's voice crackled in my ear. Visual confirmed. Target is in the northwest corner, 2nd floor. But boss, she's wired. My stomach dropped. Jason froze mid-step, hand raised to signal the team. Explain wired, he said, voice deadly calm. Explosives. Vest. Dead man's switch visible on the guard. If his heart stops, she detonates. The world tilted. Through the grimy warehouse window, I could see Sophie. Small, terrified, sitting on a metal chair with what looked like a suicide vest strapped to her chest. A guard stood 3 feet away, hand clutching something that could end her life in an instant. Jason's face had gone pale. Abort. We need a new. Lights flooded the warehouse, blinding everywhere, turning night to day. Welcome, Jason Wilson. The voice boomed through speakers, accented and mocking. Did you think I wouldn't anticipate your arrival? Kozlov stepped into view on the 2nd floor catwalk, Sophie in front of him, gun pressed to her temple. Even from 100 feet away, I could see her shaking. Mommy! Her scream tore through me like shrapnel. I moved before Jason could stop me, stepping into the open, hands raised. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Katrina, get back. Jason's voice was sharp with panic, but I was already walking forward, into the light, into the open. Kozlov smiled. Ah, the wife. Or should I say, ex-wife. He stroked Sophie's hair with his free hand. She whimpered. Tell me, Jason, did you think you could hide them forever? Did you think divorcing her would keep her safe from your enemies? Let her go, Victor. Your problem is with me. Yes, it is. Kozlov's smile vanished. My son was 23 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. You took that. So now I take everything from you. But first, I want you to watch. He moved the gun from Sophie's head to point at me. Understanding crashed over me like ice water. He didn't want Sophie dead. He wanted Jason to watch me die. To feel the same loss, the same helpless agony. Wait. kept walking, hands still raised. You want revenge? Amy. Sophie, go. I'll come up there, no weapons, no tricks. Me for her. Katrina, no. Jason's voice cracked. She's my daughter. I looked back at him, found his eyes in the darkness beyond the lights. Saw his anguish, his rage, his absolute terror. She's my daughter, Jason. This is my choice. Kozlov considered this, head tilted. Then nodded. Come up. Slowly. Any sudden moves and I detonate the vest myself. The stairs felt like climbing toward execution. Each step was agony. Sophie's crying growing louder as I approached. But I kept my face calm, my movements steady. When I reached the catwalk, Kozlov grabbed my arm, yanked me close. His breath smelled like tobacco and hatred. Kneel beside her. I knelt, finding Sophie's eyes. Her face was blotchy from crying, terror making her pupils huge. The vest was too big on her small frame, wires visible beneath the canvas. I leaned close, pretending to comfort her. Baby, listen to mommy very carefully. When I say run, you run to the man in black. Don't look back. Just run. But mommy, do you trust me? She nodded, tears streaming. Kozlov was talking now, monologuing to Jason below. 5 years ago you destroyed everything. My operation, my legacy, my family. You killed my Alexei in cold blood. He came after my family, Jason called back. And now I come after yours. Kozlov's voice rose to a shout. But I won't give you the mercy of a quick death. I'll let you live, Jason Wilson. Live with the knowledge that you couldn't save them. That your violence, your power, your empire, none of it mattered when it counted. He pressed the gun to the back of my head. Sophie screamed. I counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Run! I threw my head backward, felt cartilage crunch as my skull connected with Kozlov's nose. His grip loosened. I shoved Sophie with everything I had, sending her stumbling toward the stairs. Go! Go! Gunfire erupted below. Jason's team, finally with clear shots. Kozlov's hand found my throat. And the world exploded into violence. The world became gunfire and chaos. Jason's team breached from 3 points simultaneously. Windows shattering, flashbangs detonating, trained killers pouring into the warehouse like a flood. Kozlov's men returned fire, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness like strobe lights. Sophie was running, stumbling down the stairs, the vest bouncing with each step. I saw Marcus moving to intercept her. Saw the guard with the dead man switch, raising his weapon toward her small back. I threw myself forward. Covered her body with mine. The impact felt like being hit with a sledgehammer. White-hot pain exploding through my shoulder, spinning me sideways. But Sophie was down beneath me, protected by my body as bullets chewed through metal railings and concrete. Katrina! Jason's roar cut through the noise. I looked up, found him through the smoke. He was moving like death incarnate. Precise, efficient, unstoppable. Each shot found its target. Each movement brought him closer. Men fell before him like wheat before a scythe. And his face was terrible to behold. This was Jason Wilson unrestrained. The monster I'd always known lurked beneath the expensive suits. Sophie, I gasped, clutching my shoulder. Blood seeped between my fingers. Get Sophie. Marcus was there, scooping her up, tearing at the vest with practiced hands. Bomb squad we need. I've got it. Chen's voice crackled. Explosives disabled remotely. The vest is dead. But Kozlov was moving, running toward the back exit, something clutched in his hand. The remote trigger, I realized with sick certainty. He still thought he could detonate it. Pushed myself up. Pain screamed through my shoulder, but my hand found the Glock at my hip. Jason had taught me to shoot. Had put this weapon in my hands for exactly this moment. If you have no choice. Ran. Every step was agony, blood soaking my tactical vest, but I ran. Through smoke and bodies and chaos. Kozlov was 20 feet ahead, then 15, heading for a door where a car idled with the engine running. Kozlov! He spun, gun rising. But I was faster, already aiming. Jason's training overriding every instinct that said I couldn't do this. Time slowed. I saw his finger on the trigger. Saw beyond him to where Sophie stood with Marcus. Saw the choice crystallizing with perfect, terrible clarity. Pulled the trigger. Once. 3 times. Kozlov staggered backward, the remote falling from his grip. His gun discharged into the ceiling. He crumpled against the wall, sliding down, leaving a streak of red. His eyes found mine. Blood bubbled at his lips. Jason Wilson's wife. Kills for him after all. You're just like him. No. My voice was steady despite the gun shaking in my hands. I killed for my daughter. He smiled. Then died. The remote hit the ground. I waited for the explosion, for everything to end in fire. Nothing happened. Katrina! Jason was there, hands on my face, searching for injuries. His tactical gear was soaked with blood, whose I didn't know. Christ, you're hit. Sophie. Safe. Marcus has her. You're bleeding. The warehouse groaned around us. Jason's team had set charges, eliminating evidence, I realized dimly. We had maybe 3 minutes before this place became a tomb. Jason scooped me up like I weighed nothing. I saw Sophie over his shoulder, Marcus carrying her, the vest discarded on the ground. Her eyes found mine. Mommy. I'm okay, baby. Mommy's okay. But I wasn't. I just killed a man. Watched life drain from his eyes. Felt the recoil of the gun, the weight of the choice, the terrible finality of it. Jason carried me through the carnage. Past bodies, past his men securing the perimeter, past the life I'd tried so hard to leave behind. Sophie reached for me as we loaded into the SUV. Her small hands sticky with tears. I've got you both, Jason said, pulling us close as the vehicle accelerated. Behind us, the warehouse erupted in flames. I've got you both. Through the back window, I watched the fire consume everything. Evidence, bodies, the place where I'd become something I never thought I'd be. Killer. Just like him. Sophie buried her face in my neck, safe and whole and alive. I'd pulled the trigger. And I'd do it again. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and trauma. My shoulder throbbed despite the morphine, wrapped in clean white bandages that would scar. The bullet had gone through. Muscle damage, but nothing permanent. Nothing that wouldn't heal anyway. Sophie lay in the bed beside mine, finally sleeping after 16 hours of hysteria. She hadn't let go of my hand since the warehouse. Even unconscious, her fingers gripped mine with desperate strength, like I might disappear if she loosened her hold. Through the door's window, I could see the circus. News vans lined the street below. Reporters shouting questions at anyone entering the building. The headlines scrolling across the TV in the waiting room. Mafia boss rescues daughter in deadly shootout. 7 dead in warehouse massacre. Wilson family reunited after kidnapping. Police had tried twice to interview me. Both times, men in expensive suits, Jason's lawyers, had materialized like genies, citing trauma and medical necessity, creating legal walls so impenetrable the detectives had retreated in frustration. Money and power, bending the world to his will. The child psychologist had been gentle. Dr. Reynolds, gray-haired and kind-eyed, had spent an hour with Sophie before pulling me aside. She's in shock. The nightmares will be significant. She'll need therapy, extensive therapy. And she'll need stability, safety, routine. The road to recovery will be long, Ms. Boucher. Ms. Boucher. Not Wilson. Like the name could protect us from what we'd become. I'd killed a man. The memory replayed in fractured loops. The gun's recoil, Kozlov's expression, blood spreading across concrete. I could still feel the trigger's resistance under my finger. Could still hear his last words. You're just like him. Was I? Had crossing that line, pulling that trigger, made me complicit in Jason's world? Or had I always been complicit, living in luxury purchased with blood, looking away from the violence that funded our life? Jason stood outside the door. Had been standing there for hours, barely moving. Security flanked him, Marcus to the left, Chen to the right, but he was the constant, silent sentinel. Not asking to come in, not demanding anything. Just there. A nurse tried to make him leave during shift change. I'd heard his quiet refusal through the door. Heard the nurse's flustered retreat when she realized who she was dealing with. My mind drifted to that last fight, the one that ended everything. Sophie had been at a sleepover. We'd been alone in the penthouse and I'd found the envelope. Photos of a rival mobster, beaten beyond recognition, Jason's ring visible in one shot. This is who you are, I'd said, holding the photos between us like evidence. This is what you do. To protect us. Everything I do is destroying us. Sophie's growing up thinking this is normal. Thinking violence is love. I won't let her become this. Then what do you want me to be, Katrina? You knew what I was when you married me. I thought I could change you. I thought love would be enough. His laugh had been bitter. Love doesn't pay for security. Love doesn't keep the wolves from the door. My world keeps you safe. Your world almost killed us today. We'd stared at each other across that unbridgeable divide. And I'd known with sick certainty that nothing would change. Not him, not his choices, not the blood-soaked foundation of everything we'd built. So I'd left. Now, watching him through the glass, I saw the truth with terrible clarity. His world had almost killed Sophie. But it had also saved her. The door cracked open. Jason didn't enter, just stood at the threshold. His clothes were clean now. Someone had brought fresh ones, but exhaustion carved lines around his eyes. Do you regret it? His voice was barely a whisper, careful not to wake Sophie. Pulling the trigger. I looked at my sleeping daughter, her face finally peaceful. No. And needing me. The question hung between us, heavy with everything we'd never resolved. A year of absence, of building a life without him, of pretending I could be someone other than Jason Wilson's wife. Every day, I said honestly. I regret needing you every single day. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe, or understanding. But I'd do it again, I continued. Call you. Let you back in. Watch you destroy people to save her. My voice cracked. I'd make the same choice every time, and I hate that about myself. Jason nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to come back. Good. Because I won't. I know. He glanced at Sophie. But I'm not disappearing either. She's my daughter. You're. He stopped, jaw working. You're under my protection. Whether you want it or not. I don't want it. I know that too. We looked at each other across the small room, across the chasm of violence and love and impossible choices. Thank you, I finally said. For saving her. Thank you for pulling the trigger. Then he closed the door, returning to his vigil. And I held my daughter's hand, marked by violence, bought by blood, and wondered if any of us would ever be clean again. The apartment looked smaller with Jason's security team stationed outside. Marcus stood by the main entrance. Chan monitored from the fire escape, and two more men I didn't know covered the building's blind spots. Overkill for a cramped two-bedroom in a neighborhood that had never seen this much tactical gear. But Sophie was home. Finally home. She sat on our second-hand couch, clutching the stuffed rabbit Jason had brought her. New, expensive, nothing like the worn toys she'd left behind at his penthouse. Dr. Reynolds said routine would help. Familiar things. Small steps toward normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Jason carried in the last bag from the car. Medications, therapy schedules, emergency contacts. He'd orchestrated her discharge like a military operation, ensuring every possible need was anticipated. The old Jason, controlling and thorough, but now I understood it differently. This was how he showed love. Through preparation, protection, overwhelming force against anything that might harm us. Sophie looked up at him, then at me. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Is Daddy staying?" The word hit me like a fist. Daddy. She hadn't called him that since I'd packed our bags a year ago. Hadn't asked about him except in whispers, like saying his name might summon him. Jason froze, his eyes finding mine across the room, asking permission he'd never needed before. "Not tonight, sweetheart," I said gently. "But he'll visit." "Okay." Her face fell, but she nodded. Jason knelt beside the couch, eye level with our daughter. "I'll be right outside if you need me. All night. Every night. I promise you're safe now. Pinky promise." He hooked his little finger with hers, and I watched this man, who'd tortured information from screaming men, who'd killed without hesitation, make a sacred vow to a 7-year-old. Pinky promise. After Sophie was settled with a movie, Jason followed me to the kitchen. The space was tiny, forcing us close. I could smell his cologne, that familiar scent that used to mean home. "I can't do this again," I said quietly. "Go back to what we were. The penthouse, the lies, pretending I don't know what you are. I'm not asking you to." His voice was steady, certain. "I'm not asking for reconciliation, Katrina. I'm not asking you to forgive me or love me or trust me. Then what are you asking? Let me keep you both safe. That's all." He leaned against the counter, and for a moment he looked exhausted, stripped of armor. "I won't interfere with your life. Won't try to control you. But I need to know you're protected. That what happened will never happen again." I thought about our first date, before I knew what he did, who he was. Just a man in a coffee shop who'd made me laugh, who'd been charming and attentive and seemingly normal. I'd fallen for that version of him, the mask he wore for the world. Now I saw him clearly. Monster and protector, danger and safety. The man who'd read Sophie bedtime stories and the man who'd systematically destroyed anyone who threatened her. Both were true. Both were him. Partnership, I said. For Sophie. Separate lives but shared purpose. Yes. You don't get to make decisions for us. Don't get to override me. Agreed. And when she's older, when she asks about what happened, we tell her the truth. All of it. Jason's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The truth. We stood there in my cramped kitchen, negotiating détente like diplomats after war. It wasn't forgiveness. Wasn't reconciliation. Just a framework for survival. That night, I found Jason in Sophie's room. She'd finally fallen asleep after 2 hours of fighting it, terrified of nightmares. He sat beside her bed reading Where the Wild Things Are. His voice low and soothing, the words as familiar to him as they were to her. His gun rested on the nightstand. Loaded, ready, never far from reach. The image crystallized everything. This was my life now. Loving a dangerous man. Being dangerous myself. The gun I'd used still sat in evidence somewhere, but I could feel its weight in my palm, could still remember the choice that had transformed me. Jason looked up, found me in the doorway. Something passed between us. Not love, not anymore, but understanding. Recognition. We'd both crossed lines we couldn't uncross. We'd both become what we needed to be. We need to talk, I said. About everything. About what comes next. He closed the book, stood carefully to avoid waking Sophie. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I agreed. But tomorrow felt like a promise now instead of a threat. Tomorrow meant Sophie healing. Tomorrow meant building something new from the wreckage of what we'd been. Tomorrow meant learning to live with the monsters we'd become. His and mine. And maybe finding grace in the survival. Jason passed me in the doorway. His hand brushing mine for just a moment. Then he returned to his post outside, guardian and threat, the devil I knew and the devil I needed. And I stood watching my daughter sleep, marked by violence, bought by blood, choosing tomorrow despite everything it cost. Thank you so much for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories like this.